So this lesson is about four different types of angles that you get when you have straight lines crossing each other. And in example one, vertically opposite angles, which are equal, they are the angles in this diagram here that are opposite each other. So that's going to be this angle and this angle here. They look about the same size, and in fact they are equal. So if this angle here was 30 degrees, this would also be 30 degrees. And also these two angles here, this one and the one on underneath it, are vertically opposite and therefore equal. Whatever this angle was or is, let's say it's 150 degrees, then this one here, which is vertically opposite this one would be 100 and I can't remember if I said 130 or 150 degrees, the same as this one. So that's vertically opposite angles. So these two are vertically opposite and these two are vertically opposite. In example 2, and the last three examples are about when you have parallel lines, which are what these arrows mean. These two lines going in the same direction are parallel. And what happens when they are crossed by a straight line. So alternate angles are equal, and they are angles that are between the two parallel lines, but on opposite sides of the line that's cutting those parallel lines. And that line that cuts the parallel lines is called a transversal. So on opposite sides of the transversal and between the lines, the parallel lines would be, say, this angle and that angle there. So that angle there and this one here, between that line and those two lines, and the angles there and the angle there are equal to each other. And alternate angles always make a Z. So using a different color, if I was to draw along there, so making that green, and you can see, I missed that line. So there's a green Z. So the Z in this diagram shows a pair of alternate angles, and they are always equal to each other. And I could have drawn the Z going this way, which would mean that the angles there, that's actually pretty dark. The angle there and the angle there are equal. So there's the Z over here, then up and then across. It's just a funny looking Z, but they always make a Z alternate angles and they are equal in size. Example 3, co-interior angles. They are angles and they add up to 180, and they are angles that make a C, and they are between the two parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. So along, I might use dark blue this time, so along that line and this line here and that line there, that's where you get a C, and the two angles here, so this one here and this one here, are between the two parallel lines and on the same side of that transversal. And so these two add up to 180 degrees. And you can see they make a C when you draw it like that. And you can do the two angles on this side here. So this angle here and this angle here. They also make a back to front C if you like. So those two angles here, the two stars, they add up to 180 degrees. They are co-interior angles. And these two here, the yellow dots, are also co-interior angles and they add up to 180 degrees. So for example, if this angle here was 100, this angle here would have to be 80 degrees for them both to add up to 180. And similarly with this one, and you can see actually that because of that Z there, this angle and this angle are actually alternate angles. So if this one was, say, 100, and then that would mean this one would be 80. So making that Z there, that angle there would be the same as this one, which in fact is 100. And that would mean this one would have to be 80 if you use the fact that there is a C, and that means they're co-interior, so 100 plus 80 here would have to equal the 180. And you can see that this angle is alternate to this angle because it makes a Z going that way, and so therefore they are equal as well. So you can figure out the angles in diagrams like these by using any of the, well, not so much any of these types of angles, but they're always there when you have a straight line cutting parallel lines. And you don't always, well, I wouldn't have had to use the alternate angles to figure these out anyway. There would have been another way. If this is 100 here and that being a straight line, then this would have to be 80 because in a straight line, which is called a straight angle, both angles have to add up to 180. So if this one's 100, then that one's going to be 80 anyway. So that would have been another way of figuring out these two angles rather than using the fact that there are alternate angles anyway in the diagram. So a few different ways of figuring out the angles there. So that's co-interior angles and they add up to 180 degrees. Last example for corresponding angles are equal, and corresponding angles are angles that are in the same position. They're kind of in the same spot but in a different part of the diagram. So if I pick this angle here, which angle looks like it's kind of in a spot or in a position where the lines are going exactly like that? And the answer is up here in this spot here. So this angle up here is kind of facing the same way as this one here, but it's in a different part of the diagram. So these two are corresponding angles and they are both equal. So if this angle here was 80 degrees, this one here would be 80 degrees as well. And there's also two corresponding angles here in that position over here, there and there. There's also, just changing color, a blue one here and then a corresponding angle down here. So those two are corresponding. And then last of all, the one on this side, that angle is corresponding to this one here. So there's lots of corresponding angles. Well, there's actually 4 pairs in this diagram. And the main thing about them is that they are equal in size. And they're kind of in the same position, but in a different part of the diagram. So the key to knowing which one of these to use is just being clear on what each different type of angle is and the fact that you know about them, whether they're equal or whether they add up to 180. The alternate angles, you can always find them by doing the Z. Co-interior angles always make that C and they're between the two parallel lines. Vertically opposite are opposite each other when you have two straight lines crossing. And for example, in this diagram here, there's one straight line and another. So this angle here is vertically opposite this one here. So in fact, all of these 4 types of angles are in each of these 3 diagrams in example 2, 3, and 4. There are vertically opposite angles here and here and here and here and here and here, here and here. There are co-interior, 2 co-interior angles here. There are 2 sets of alternate angles, which I've already mentioned, so here and here and here and here. And then there's the 4 sets of corresponding angles, just like I marked in this diagram. So one of them would be here, and then the other one would be this one here. And so there's lots of angles, particularly these 3 type of angles that you'll get when you have a straight line crossing 2 parallel lines. So the key again to recognizing them is just being clear on what each one is. Well, I'll say that again. Be clear about what corresponding angles are, and they are like the ones I've drawn in this diagram here, in the same position but in a different part of the diagram. The co-interior angles, the C is a way of recognizing them. They're between the parallel lines, and then the alternate are on opposite sides of the transversal and between the parallel lines. So the key to remembering these angles is to maybe copy these examples down and refer to them when you have a diagram that looks something like these. And it's always a good thing to mark in, say, the Z and the C when the diagram that you've got has got a question that involves those two types of angles. And it just really depends on what is in the diagram. But yeah, it's a good way just marking them in, and that way you can tell where they're corresponding and they're alternate and they're co-interior. You know the facts about them because you'll have practiced lots of homework. So if you have a question about these, please ask one. And that's about it for this lesson, and I will see you in the next one.